Little wisdoms, mentality. When I was young, I was told a story about an indigenous chief who saw the colonizers coming in off their ships. When he saw them, he turned to his people and he said, "These people are mentally ill," because he saw that we couldn't live in balance with the world. Now, I say this because I saw this podcast the other day that was a psychiatrist talking about mental illness. I'm personally diagnosed with a few different mental illnesses, and I couldn't help but feel like he didn't really know what he was talking about. I was lucky enough to be raised in indigenous teachings, and though I know that pain that comes along with mental illness, I also know that the mentality we have, stepping into the reality of our life, can play a huge role in the quality of how we're living. I was taught when I was young that somebody like me who started hearing voices at 12 would have been given to a medicine person to apprentice and learn to work with what they experience. It wouldn't have been seen as an illness, it would have been seen as a gift/burden. Now, I think this is a great example of the difference in mentality to modern ways of thought and indigenous ways of thought. In the indigenous way of thought, they decided, hey, it is real. We need to learn to work with this. In the way we think, we're always trying to correct something, like we're actually in control of it. But life happens, and we can't stop life from happening. I find that in my generation, our viewpoint of the world can be skewed by the way the modern world wants to perceive. And I mean, that is natural for all of us. We have to see the world and learn to see the world in a way that works with the world we live in, or we end up living in fantasy realities, which I know I've done enough of. However, that doesn't change that our mentality, our cultural mentality, is actually pretty destructive for the world we live in. You don't need to quantify something scientifically for it to be real. It's like telling a person that their emotion isn't valid. It is entirely valid. There is a difference between what is tangible and what is apparent. We don't decide what reality is. Reality is, and we need to learn to live with both the tangible and what we are experiencing. When we can't learn to live in that balance, when we can't learn to live not only with what is right in front of us, but what is right inside us, then we fall out of balance because the world isn't just surface. Now, when we look back to that teaching that a person like me who started hearing voices at 12 would have been given to a medicine person and would have had support, would have been understood, and would have gained teachings to live their fullest life, do you think they would have felt sick for carrying what they carry? And that's the power of mentality. I mean, when we believe we're sick, we start to get sick, we start to act sick. It's the placebo effect, and it's just natural. And when we're taught that we are actually just living in a way that is a bit different than others, that maybe needs a bit more support, well, we feel that we can actually live a fuller life. And that's cultural mentality, and that's victimhood too, which is really, really tough to break out of. I mean, I'm diagnosed schizoaffective with bipolar tendencies. I have major depressive disorder. I have ADHD. I have borderline personality disorder. And at the end of it, the doctor gave me personality disorder unspecified, which I think was them throwing in the towel. But what I'm getting at is that I am living a good life. And I got there by believing that my sickness did not lay in something that was naturally a part of me, but it actually lay in my inability to live in balance with it. When I was 17, I ended up in CAMH, and I remember sitting with a psychiatrist and telling that psychiatrist that if I look at this wall and I think of it waving, and I focus on trying to get myself to see it waving, I will see it start to ripple. And I said, I can differentiate this reality from my own. But yeah, that is a part of my mind. That is a part of who I am. And I ended up receiving more medication, I feel, for saying that. And I think that shows a difference in mentality. I mean, our mind is something that can shift, can change, can perceive in different ways. And when we are unable to live in balance with that apparent truth, we end up in a place where we're trying to correct something that doesn't need to be corrected. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying mental illness is an illness. I'm saying that the illness isn't in that part of me that could hear voices. The illness was in the part of me that decided not to learn to live in balance with it. And that's the cultural modern mentality, that we don't need to learn to live in balance with life because we can fix life. And that's just not truth. And if you persist in such a thing that is so against natural law, all you have at the end of it is to distract yourself and to hide from the inevitable truth that we are not in control. And control can only come when we acknowledge that simple and beautiful thing that we are the wind, we are the water, we are the fire, we are the earth. And we cannot be tamed and also retain our nature. But we are conscious as well, and we are able to separate ourselves from that truth, and that is the great test of humanity. Our mentality, the way we see things, creates such a great impact on the way we live. It is incredible. And life is still happening. Life continues to happen, and we have to learn to live in balance with that. We can choose to forget. We can choose to distract. We can choose to live in the modern parasitic mentality. We can choose to correct something that doesn't need to be corrected. Or we can learn to live in a way that honors life as a whole, which includes both the will to live in balance with what is, and also the will to understand and overcome what is keeping us away from our fullest potential. The illness isn't that we experience life in a different way. The illness is that we haven't learned to live in balance with what we experience. For example, I used to live in psychosis because I was recovering from addiction. And I remember one of the main things that helped me get out of that place was recognizing that it doesn't matter if the Illuminati is listening to my thoughts. It changes absolutely nothing. I am still me, and I am still alive, and I am who I am. That is the power of balance, of learning to live in balance. I didn't try to fight it. I said, hey, this is happening. And, by believing this, I can actually reach a place where I feel better about the life I'm living and more able to live to my fullest. Mentality is a tool in the hands of the wise. Mentality is a tool in the hands of the wise. When we can learn to see the world the way we need to see it, so we can progress to our next stage of personal evolution, we are creating space for enlightenment, peace, abundance, happiness, joy. We are creating space not only for ourselves, but in this world, for all the things that we dream this world can be. We need not stay in the mentality where something that is a part of us is a sickness. We need to learn to acknowledge life on life's terms and meet it with love, respect, and the will to act. Mentality is a tool in the hands of the wise. Little Wisdom's mentality. I want to invite any listeners to send me ideas for podcasts or to come to a podcast and talk with me about a topic they're interested in. There's an email in the description of Little Wisdoms that you can email if you're interested. Thank you. Blessings.